So, John, thank you for offering to talk to us.
It's a pleasure.
Or accept our invitation. I must say, one of the main reasons why we're so glad to speak to you is through your career as we know it, in Derwent and before and afterwards, is your work has involved legacy, respect for people, the environment, the people you're developing for. And I'd be very interested to know your perspective on that and how perhaps the thoughts of respect and legacy have shaped your career.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to hear that, if that's what people think. I think we learnt on the job as we went along. As far as things like reputation are concerned for the company and also for myself, we've always based a tremendous amount on that. Originally, Derwent started not as a regenerator or a redeveloper. It started really as an investment business with hopefully some skills in property management, and gradually it evolved. The big thing was the change of use order of B1, where everything could be virtually offices, and that opened the way for us buying older buildings. We were known as the people who bought secondary property in those days, but we were able to improve it excuse me, and gradually over a period of time turn it into grade A properties. And we learned as we went along, using architects, and this was principally driven by Simon Silver, I must take the credit for that, and doing interesting little schemes. First scheme we did was a place called Colebrook Row, Islington, which was Chawton McCaslin in those days, and it was about 4,000 feet of a converted factory, and it won a little award. And I think gradually people got confidence, and we started to do more, and always looking to improve the buildings, always looking to have really good relationships. We've never been a company that has just given an architect a brief and said, just get on with it. We've sat side by side, and a lot of these firms have grown up with us. And it's always very important to have a working relationship, both with your architects, that they feel you're interested and you want to produce a fine product, and also with the people you deal with. I think that's really been the emphasis on that, and we've looked to improve it all the time as we've gone along.
Yes, and that, what you might consider the Derwent family of consultants, contractors, agents, and so on, has come along with you, haven't they?
It's relationships, and you want to get the best of their skills, and the way of getting the best is to work with them and to collaborate.
Yes.
There's been a form of collaboration all the way through, as you said, right from the architect to the construction side, sometimes more difficult, as we all know, right through with the agents that we deal with, everybody, the whole way through. That's always been the message at Derwent.
Yes.
On the side that you probably don't see so much, on the financing side, the dealing with shareholders, stakeholders, the city, it's always been very important to us that we have a good reputation.
Yes.
And I'm sure that under my successor, Paul Williams, I know it will continue.
I think so. I think so. And in terms of the legacy of buildings, Derwent still are and were known as almost being the starter, if you like, of an area of regeneration. And that's even moved on into sort of Silicon Roundabout area and white collar working, which we might touch on later. But for instance, I remember my own personal history of working on Pentonville Road on one of your developments there, and there was nothing else on that road at the time of any interest whatsoever, and it was the start of that, as you say, the warehouse conversion to either residential or office space.
Well, those are the buildings that we really love. Everybody would probably call us developers now, but that's really not true. We love the older buildings, building like T building, which is done very well. We just love them, and returning them to an industrial format.
Yes.
But what happened was you got the boom with residential, and we couldn't get near the pricing.
Yeah, yeah.
So gradually, those opportunities became less frequent.
That's right. So
but by then we'd built up a substantial portfolio, and if we couldn't do a Derwent on it, keeping the original, maybe cutting back half a ground floor to put light in the basement, we then started to look at redevelopment.
Yes.
So we learnt as we went along. But there's no doubt the company based itself on the older type buildings, and I don't think in those days people knew what to do with them. They didn't realise the potential, but through working with good people, and very much the company become more and more design-led, we noted these opportunities, and we probably had the field to ourselves in those days, because people didn't understand it. Of course, it's become considerably more competitive since then, as I mentioned, the residential, and we've gone into bigger things, but there is still, that's where the first love of the company is.
That's right. I mean, it is inevitable when you start something and it's a good idea, people latch on to that good idea and copy it, which is the form of
I think there were two things. I think we made a lot of play out of entrances, and I always say to people, it's not just sticking a couple of Barcelona chairs in reception, it's far more than that these days. And you never get a second chance of making a first impression, and we always set out to make something fascinating in our buildings. When you walked in, there'd be a dynamic feeling, a feeling of energy, and that's very much been the emphasis all the way through. Buildings like Angel Islington, when you go there, there's such a buzz. It's like a busy hotel. And those are the things we've looked for, to make buildings energized, make them really lively. In fact, people have very often said, we want to try and be in one of your buildings, which is the greatest compliment. Another building, one of the first we ever bought, Middlesex House, Cleveland Street, which was a textile factory. It's always been successful. We've done 9 phases of rolling refurbishment. It's not a very big building, very simple, straightforward industrial floors, steel staircases, everything, and there's always a great demand for that sort of space. But as I said, we moved on. We're doing other things slightly bigger than that, only because those buildings aren't available.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.